Start recording. Hello everyone and welcome to Handmade, the show where we code a complete game live on stream on Twitch. No engines, no libraries, it's just us here and our own little typing fingers. Now we have a little bit of residual stuff from the Q&A yesterday that I kind of wanted to finish up that we didn't really take a close enough look at. But other than that, I think we are kind of done playing around with the asset system. We had a couple bug things we wanted to look at. So today, we're probably going to get back to implementing some font stuff. We already did the stuff where we got font glyphs, but we haven't done the work of actually figuring out what the metrics of the fonts are. So like how we measure letters and line them up and stuff like that. We haven't started any of that. So that's what I would like to do today. But first, I just want to clean up some loose ends from the Q&A yesterday because we kind of slammed some code in and hadn't really looked at it. So I want to make sure it's all okay. Today is day 167, so if you're trying to follow along at home, you want to grab day 166's source code, unzip that into a directory, and that's what I'm doing today. So if you pre-order the game on handmadehero.org, look in that current zip file for day 166's source and unzip it. All right. So what we kind of randomly threw in at the end yesterday was, I think we had like a some kind of a state spin lock that we were doing there, where we did something like, you know, this. Yeah. So what we were doing is we were playing around with this in the Q&A, and we were basically saying, like, okay, if you tried to do something, if you were trying to load something, and it turns out you were not the first person to try and load it, if it was supposed to be immediate, you were supposed to spin lock. Now, there's a couple of problems with this piece of code as written. And this is why I wanted to come take a look at it again. First of all, I neglected to actually use this volatile version there, which is what I had wanted, right? So that's a little bit of a mistake, to say the least. But the other thing that's more important is this spin lock should only happen if we were trying to be immediate. If we weren't trying to be immediate, we don't want to wait for the asset, right? We have no, that was not at all our intention. So I want to get rid of that as well. And I think that's mostly all that there was. We kind of played around with that in the Q&A, and we never really finished it properly. So I think that's a little bit more proper way to leave that code, yeah, from where we had it. So let's go back to our font thing. As you can see, we kind of left it in a state where we were debugging it. That's why we had that black background on the font glyphs there, instead of doing them sort of more cleanly where they didn't have the background, obviously. So if we wanted to go back to that, what I want to do is bring up the test asset builder thing, which is the thing where we're kind of been doing our asset file spec stuff. And as you remember, we had a pound defining here, so you could choose if you wanted to use no libraries at all, even in the asset builder, you could set that to 1. If you wanted to use STB true type instead, I showed how to use that, and you could set this to 0 and compile that in. But with use fonts from Windows, we never quite finished doing our, you can see here, doing our anti-aliasing. So if you look at that closely, it was not anti-alias, and that's where we stopped on the stream. And so it might be worth just taking a second to fix the anti-aliasing in the Windows version just for now, because I don't know that that'd be that hard to do, right? So if we're using fonts from Windows, we're in this path, right? And the way that this works is when we actually created a device context, we do like create compatible DC and all this stuff. Someone was hypothesizing on the forums that perhaps the reason that we were getting anti-aliasing is because we had some kind of a monochrome bitmap potentially, because create compatible DC 0 might not be the same as using create compatible DC get DC 0. And I don't know if that's true or not. Get DC 0 gives you back the screen DC. Maybe create compatible DC 0 just does some kind of a default behavior. So it's possible that that was creating sort of a monochrome backing bitmap, and so not having, it basically didn't have any color to work with, so it literally couldn't anti-alias. I'm not sure if that's true. So if you take a look here, this is what it was looking like. I mean, I don't know if you can see that too well, but it's definitely not anti-aliased on there. That's the way that we had it. And so if we rebuild our art assets here, I'll just go ahead and recompile, go into the Handmade data directory, and then run the test asset builder again. That'll go through and do its little thing, extract the fonts again, and we can see if that actually changed anything. I don't know if it did. It looks pretty much exactly the same to me. I don't see any change in the degree of anti-aliasing there. That's just It's just my recollection. So yeah, so I'm not sure. So in general, I don't know. If we wanted to actually make sure that all this stuff worked right, I feel like we would have to do a little bit of work here to actually set up a bitmap that was somewhat reasonable. And I'm not sure exactly how we would do that. So I'm going to go ahead and look at doing something that will create an actual bitmap that I have more control over. So we can start by just trying to verify, that we have some kind of a bitmap that's going to meet our criteria, right? Maybe I'll do a create DI bitmap as well, something we could read out of directly, right? So here's a create DI bitmap. So what that would do, right, is that would allow us to pass a bitmap info structure. And the bitmap info structure would be the same sort of thing that we've been using for loading bitmaps, right? Like exactly the same thing. So all that same stuff, right, that we had before, like the bitmap info header stuff, all that same stuff, we could just set it now. Instead of reading it out of a file like we were doing, we would just set that stuff. So we could set all of the things that we wanted to set here in terms of how we wanted, what the width, the height was, how many bits there were, all that kind of stuff. We could set that stuff, and then we would at least know that we had correctly selected into the device, a bitmap that was going to be to our liking. So we could take that part out of the equation, make sure that there isn't a problem. So if you look at create DI bitmap, we would take a handle to the device context. That would, of course, be the compatible DC that we created here. We would pass it that header, which is going to be one of these things. We would probably just set this to nothing. I guess we would just pass the init to clear everything out. I don't know what we'd want to do there. We might want to just clear it ourselves. Looks like restricts the size of dimensions, if usage, pointer to the array of bytes containing the initial bitmap data. The format of the data depends on the BI bit count. That's not really what I wanted. I actually want to create a bitmap that I can actually read out of. So I think I probably want more of like a dib section like we were creating before, right? Like I want to actually know that I can access the bits myself. Because if I can access the bits myself, I could also get out of the business of doing this getPixel nonsense. Because getPixel is super slow. It's an OS call every time I want to read this. And so even though this is the asset packer and we don't really care too much how slow it is, I mean, there's no sense in being unnecessarily slow. That's my feeling on it, right? So what I would say is, let's go ahead and try to create one of these dib sections, something like that. And I feel like that would maybe get us a little closer to our goal of having anti-alias fonts, and also we could at the same time fix some of that nastiness with the readout, with the getPixel call, which is not fabulous. So if I was going to create one of these dib sections, I need to have a bitmap info, right? And I need to pass that in here. This iUsage field is, saying whether or not we want to have this be a palletized bitmap or an RGB bitmap, and we definitely want it to be RGB, right? Although, type of data contained to the BMI colors. So to be honest, this doesn't really matter because we're not going to even pass a BMI colors thing. So I think it really actually doesn't matter. That's like if you want to specify like palletized stuff or something. So I don't think we even really care about that, but it doesn't matter. The location of the dib bit value. So this thing here, ppb bits, is going to give us a pointer to the actual bits that we can then read out of, right? And that's the sort of thing that I wanted. So this is basically like the bits or something. I don't know what we want to call that, but we can just pass that like so. All right. So let's see. H section, handle to a file mapping object. Okay, that we don't need at all, right? We don't want any of this stuff. We just want a standard in-memory thing. We're not trying to do any kind of weird like out-of-memory stuff. And okay, so that's not a problem. And same thing with offset. So that's all totally fine, right? So all that is pretty easy, right? We can create that, and that would give us our bitmap back. And then we could, of course, select it in. Now, the problem is this bitmap info thing here. We have to actually initialize that to set that bitmap info to stuff that would actually be meaningful, right? Because it's going to use, we're passing this in, it's going to use this bitmap info to actually create the div section. And so, you know, we've got to fill it out meaningfully, right? So if I click on bitmap info header here, what I can do is I can start to set these values, right? I can just go ahead and grab them all. Thank you. And set them. There we go. Just kind of get this going here. There we go. And some here. You know, I mean, if you're feeling kind of feisty, if you've got a little bit of, you know, zest, if you've got some life in you this evening, you could even go ahead and do rectangle kill there. Always a big favorite, always a big crowd favorite, a rectangular kill. So we got to set these guys up. And so, you know, the number of bytes required by the structure, well, we know what the number of bytes required by the structure is. Presumably, it's just the size of. We know the width and the height. Oh, wait, but this is just the header part, right? So it's BMI header. These are actually all part of the header. So presumably, I can just do that. Although you'll notice they didn't actually quite say whether that size was supposed to refer to the whole thing or just my part of the thing. So I don't know. That's a good question. Look, which one did you want for BI size? The number of bytes required by the structure would suggest it's just this, but we'll see. Anyway, okay, so the width we should already have access to somewhere in here. We should know that. Like we should have some kind of notion of how big the thing was that we were drawing in. With, where are you? Yeah, I guess we don't know. Size 6. So we just do, yeah, we don't really do anything. So we just need something here that would tell us the maximum width that we might ever want, right? So this would be like a max dim or something, right? A max dimension. So we're just going to have to do something like, okay, you know, it's 1024 is the biggest character we'd ever have or something like that. All right, so let's see. BI planes, the number of planes for the target device, it must be set to 1. All right, well, that's easy. The bit count is going to be 32, presumably, because, yep. We could also do 24, but either way, it doesn't really matter. We want probably 32, so it's U at 32 aligned would be easiest for us. BI compression, we don't want any compression. We want to be able to just read this out as it is, so that's all good. The size of the image for BI RGB can be set to 0, so I guess we can set it to 0, like so. Pels per meter, let's see. Application uses value, select the device. I don't know that we care about that at all. I don't know if it's an error to set it to 0, but we don't really want it. We're not going to use any colors, so we don't want any of these. We don't want a color table for this bitmap or anything like that. So we've set some stuff. There it is. We don't know whether it's going to work or not. We'll see. We can certainly run it, but we don't have any idea if it's going to be correct. So let's go ahead and see what we ended up with there. You know, I think that may have done it, though. That is looking anti-alias to me. It sure is, people. So I think that was what the doctor ordered there. We just needed to create an actual bitmap that Windows knew was going to be a reasonable number of bits per pixel, apparently, because now it's not all janky. So that's nice. All right, so if that's the case, then we kind of have another nice thing we could do, right? Because if we did that, we could put this void bits thing, right, as sort of an outside, little outside guy, right? And that would mean that now the bits could be accessed directly. So instead of having to do this kind of nonsense, we could just get the bits out ourselves, right? Now the problem with that is I don't know what the actual stride is going to be, but my understanding is the stride is actually not, it's always going to be, as long as we're 32 bits per pixel, I think the way it allocates them is always the same. Because you notice there's no stride in here, so I think it always just does like one of those things where it kind of rounds up to the nearest D word. So I think we're probably fine to just assume that that's true. And what that would mean is that we could literally read out the bits sort of directly along the line without too much trouble, right? Without really too much trouble. So let's take a look here at how this is going. So really, we've got a little bit of work to do here. This kind of runs through that bitmap, width and height. Yeah, so what we would want to do is our standard row thing, right? We'd want to do, okay, let's start with the bits at the top there. We'd kind of come through each individual row and do U32 pixel. I guess that's really all we need, equals row. And at the end of it, we would just do the row equals the sort of bitmap width, something like that, right? Or I don't know what we want to call it. This is the like total width, or the width of the sort of extraction area. Maybe max width, something like that. We would want to do the max width, to advance to the next row. That's really about it, right? And so that in here, to read these guys off, any individual pixel at this point is just star, right? To look at it, and then we would kind of go further like so. So I think that's all we would really need to do. We just now need to actually store that max width. So we want something that's like max width equals that 1024, max height equals 1024, something like that. And then in here, we can just actually put those in there. Max width, right? Max height. Right. So I think that's reasonable, I think. Let's see if that works at all. Of course, it does not, or at least does not appear to. So let's see. Assuming we got the bits back, which we wouldn't here, and it's a static, so it will be preserved, then what we need to figure out is what did I mess up in here when we were actually getting that x back. I feel like this would have been correct. We'd start at 0, we'd kind of go forwards with that, and that should have done it, right? Because this is still using getPixel, but that's fine, right? There's nothing weird about that. That's totally fine. Although, no, I think that should be totally fine, right? So, what did I do oddly here? If this is set to bits, we set the row to the beginning of bits. We then increment the row every time through the while loop by incrementing. Well, no, that's fine. Just using just the size cx and size cy really shouldn't be a problem, right? It seems like that should be totally fine. So we only increment height times, we only increment width times. That seems totally fine to me. That seems totally fine to me. So I guess what I might say is we could put this guy back in, right? There's the get pixel, right? So this is like our reference pixel. And we could then say, step through this and see if they don't agree, right? We could actually go through here and see what actually happens. I believe we are able to step through our asset processor pretty trivially just by switching to this other SLN, right? I've got the two SLNs there, the one for the Handmade and one for the asset builder, so I can kind of switch freely between them. And so when we do our load glyph bitmap, I should be able to just, let me make sure we're running this in the data directory. I don't want to spew HHA files all over the place. Okay, yes, it is. So if I wanted to, I can run this and I can step into it so I can see what's going on. So I can come in here and go, all right, let's run to here. There's the row. Let's take a look at what that looks like. It's 0, not super surprising. But if I come in here now, I should be able to compare what's happening with ref pixel, right? And star pixel, right? So I should be able to see if they differ. In fact, I guess I could just put in an assert too that would fire at the right time, right? So assert ref pixel equals star pixel, something like this. So there you go. Our star pixel is not getting back the same thing. And where are we? We're at x11, y26, right? I say. Very interesting. Presumably, we are just getting a whole lot of 0 from this. Even though we are stepping through some semblance of some bits that presumably should have been corresponding to the bitmap that's been selected into that device context. And I don't really know why that's the case. I am interested. I would like to see this pixel pointer. I'm just curious. Is it just all zeros? Oh no, now I've done it. No. I am mildly curious. Is it all zeros? So it's just zeros as far as the eye can see. This is just, it's just all nothing, right? So somehow our bits pointer is not really actually showing us anything here. So I guess the other question is it just upside down or something? So another thing I might want to do is assert star pixel equals 0. Is star pixel ever set to anything, even after we go through all of these? No. So basically, like, we're just getting back total zeros everywhere. Which, gotta be honest, don't know why. Don't know why. I feel like create div section must be doing something I'm not expecting, but I don't know what it would be. We're definitely selecting it into the device context, which means that the device context should be rendering to it, would be my expectation. And then I feel like we should be able to grab out those bits after having done the text out, but that does not actually appear to be what actually happened, right? It appears like it's doing some other thing where it's not actually writing into the same bits that it's giving us, if that makes sense. And I am not sure how we fix that. This is one of those things where this is why programming with in a closed system is so frustrating. Like normally you'd just step in there and you'd just see, right? But of course we can't step in there because we aren't allowed to like see any of the Windows source code, so we have no idea, right? Like we have no idea what's going on. It's probably something really simple and stupid that we just made a slight error on, right? Not knowing like what we should have set up here or something, or we're stepping through slightly wrong, you know. But there's no way for us to like do easy debugging of it because we can't access any of the code that would actually have been relevant to help us, right? Which is kind of annoying. So I guess let's take a look at the documentation for create div section and see if there's anything that would give us a hint as to why it would be doing what it's doing, right? Like maybe there's some sample code we can look at that would show us something that we had forgot to do, right? Or something like this. What is div section, the actual value there? created by calling create div section function. Yeah, that's just info. That doesn't really matter, I don't think. So, well, we could look at Bitmap's overview in here and see if maybe there is something using bitmaps. Unfortunately, yeah. Well, create div section example. That's not what I want. I just want, you know, I just want a create div section. Well, that's what I wanted. Create div section instead of get pixels. That's exactly what I was looking for, right? Oh, this is somebody's like changelog, right? So hey, they did pretty much exactly the same thing we did. Wow, that's kind of eerily this close. They even did that same thing. Yeah. So they do create div section there. They do a get DC of 0 as well. This is like literally exactly the same code, right? I mean, that looks crazy close. So let's see. They select the bitmap in. They look like they're sort of clearing, or no, they're copying, I guess, from one DC to the other. Let's see. And then they long end pixels, PRGB, PB bitmap. So yeah, I mean, they're doing exactly the same thing, right? They're walking through there. Looks exactly the same. I do not know why we are having no luck there. When that seems like everything's correct. And we know it's drawing the fonts, because if we use get pixel, it actually works. So, I say. So am I doing something stupid in the loop? Like, did I just make a typo, right? Here's the bits pointer. It's pointing to the top, presumably. I mean, I guess it could be pointing backwards. If it wasn't, then we'd just crash, right? Because we're pointing into some memory that they gave us. So if we were walking the wrong direction, you'd think we'd just crash right away. So presumably we are going the correct direction. We're pointing to the bits pointer. We go through each line. We start at the row pointer, which we have here. We go for however many pixels we believe we're supposed to go by advancing 1 pixel at a time. And each pixel is 32 bits, so it should just be 1 U32's worth, right? That sure feels like it would work. Unless there's something... No, I don't think so. And then at the end of every row of these, we advance the row pointer by however much the maximum width was, which is how far it should be to get to the next row, right? Which is going to be 1024 times 4, so 4096, which again seems totally reasonable. So I don't know. I do not know. Anyone on the stream got any ideas? Anyone? Anyone? I kind of want to know why that's broken. I want to know why that's broken. There's got to be a secret. There has to be some fancy secret that we're not thinking of. And what is it? What would it be? What would it be? I feel like we could do something where we would shrink down the size of the bitmap to something easier to see. That would be one thing, certainly. By the way, to anyone on the stream who says, stop wasting time, get pixel works fine for the asset builder, that is not a handmade hero way to think about things. You are supposed to understand what is going on in your code. You are not supposed to go, oh, something randomly works here and some other thing doesn't randomly work. Well, okay, I'll just ignore it, right? That is not at all the point. Bad. We always want, if we have something we don't understand, we should try to understand it, right? And in this case, it should be relatively straightforward for us to figure out what's going on, because I feel like we're not far. We know we're using create div section in a proper way because we're actually getting glyphs out the other side, right? So if I want to, right, I can use ref pixel, and we know that ref pixel actually worked, right? So when we extract the pixels out of there, we know that that works. But for some reason, when we use the actual memory pointer that create div section returns to us, we don't seem to be able to see anything in there. And I feel like we want to know what's going on there. So the first thing that I would say is, if we actually took, what would happen if we just straight up obliterated what was in there, right? Like, what would happen if at the outset we did something like, you know, a memset of max width times max height times the size of a Win32. So the whole bitmap, right? What if we did a thing where we just set that to white, right? I'm interested to know what would actually happen. So I'm just going to full on set it to white. I'm going to take that bits pointer that we had. So Windows gives me something back. I'm wiping it with FFs. So I know that when I run it, we're going to start out with a bitmap that has all white in it. And hey, let's see here. Bits. There we go. There's all my FFs. So now we're going to watch Windows draw. It just did not even touch this thing, right? Like, there was no touching occurred. There was no touching at all, right? So when we come in here and we look at star pixel and ref pixel, it's just, so this bitmap is a lie, right? This bitmap is a total lie, right? Because if it were actually drawing that glyph, we would have seen it in here, right? So let's do something now where we kind of constrict things a little bit as well, right? Let's do something in here where we say, okay, if the width is greater than the max width, we'll clamp it, right? And if the height is greater than the max height, we'll clamp it. So now we know we can maybe do a little bit more playing around. Come in here and say, you know what? Now this thing is just 32 by 32. It's tiny. So we'll be able to look at like the whole thing in a more direct fashion, right? So now if I come in here, I can kind of get a little bit more of the bitmap on there. So here's our bits pointer. I'm going to copy it in there. There's all our FFFs. And there we can now see the whole thing, right? And I wanted to be able to see the whole thing, so I know that we're not missing some of it. So when we come through here and we do our text out, right? Hey, look, it actually drew some stuff. So I think what's happening is we're in some kind of a bottom-up, top-down situation or something where they gave us back a bitmap pointer that was in the wrong place, right? So I think if I had to guess, what we basically have here is a situation where it's drawing the wrong orientation from what we would like it to be doing, right? And we could probably fix that by saying this, right? That'd be my guess. Where There we go. Although, wait, well, you know what? Now that I think about it, if it is going from the bottom up, and it's giving us back a pointer to the top. All right, I'm gonna leave it like this for a second, and I just want to see if that's what's actually happening. Then I should be able to do essentially what it wants from me, right? I should be able to emulate what it's doing, right? I can do minus equals max width there, and do something like this, where it's max height minus 1 times max width, like so, right? I should be able to do something like that, right? So hey, it does the fill, then it does the text out, and then let's see what the ref pixel is. The ref pixel is 0, the pixel is 0, those match. Let's keep going here. And pixel's not 0. Perfect. Okay. There we go. Hey, look, we solved the problem. So let's broaden this back out. Lovely. Wouldn't you say? So if we want to do this, right, we would do something like, start the row pointer there, source row kind of a thing, put the source in here, like that, source row, step it backwards. Of course, now we could step them forwards because they're both going the same direction. Let's not mention it, you know. No need to bring that whole thing up. Assert pixel equals source plus plus source. Can I get, and then nope, can't quite get. What'd I do there? So max height minus 1. That's starting at the bottom, right? And then as we go in Y, we want to step backwards. Which one are we on here? X equals negative, what? Ah, that's not good. See, we already found a bug in our actual code before. So when we have our thing there to kind of pull an apron out around these guys, that's, I wonder how we're gonna deal with that. We're gonna have to put a little thing around here to do apron. We'll leave that out for a second. All right, let's go back to what I was doing. Okay, so Y is 26, X is 6. What does our bitmap actually look like? Well, I guess it's going to be hard to see because we're looking at there. Well, you know what I could do? I can look at source row is bits, max that's down at the bottom, then whatever min y is, it's going to have to go up from there that many, right? Which seems totally fine, times max width. Then, right, we're not pre-stepping min x, that's all. Since we're starting at min x, we just have to pre-step min x in, right? No big deal there. All right, hopefully getting a little closer, x and y, right? Because whatever the row is, we would need to go forward by that many pixels to line up with this thing. All right. So whatever the pixel is and the source is, those are not even close. So I feel like we've got one other thing. I think we were started at 10 minutes left on the clock. I don't remember, but something like that. So yeah, so now we're pre-stepping min y, we're pre-stepping min x, and we're doing our reads. That all seems good. Am I missing anything important here? I don't think so. But you never do know. Oh, pfft. Man, that's no good. Yeah, sorry, I meant to pre-step the source, not the dest. So there we go. Now we're running nicely there, right? And so with those assertions in place, you know, I can get rid of these, right? Instead, just do something like u32 pixel equals star source, right? So now, just get rid of those. And off we go. Lovely. So now I think we have successfully converted over to using Win32 properly to get all our data out there. So that's all nice. And let's see. Oh, I guess we should do one more thing, but let's just double check here. If I go back to Handmade and run it, we should see nice letters. We do have nice letters, but let's just double check here for a second. If we go in and do this, remember we were sort of we were doing the alpha separately so that we could put a black background on it. We probably don't want to do that anymore because now we're actually doing them slightly more correct. So you can see it's kind of got that black background. If we actually rebuild the art assets now with the one that uses the alpha level, we should have nicely alpha tested fonts. So there we go. So that's good. But we still need to be able to put an apron on them, which we don't have the ability to do at the moment. Because remember, the way we wrote our bitmap stuff is we expect a 1 pixel transparent border around things in order for everything to sample properly. So that's something that we still want to have to do. So we've got about 8 minutes left. Maybe we should figure out how we want to do that. I think probably what we'd want to do here is inside sort of this width and height copy, we would want to account for that. I'm wondering if I can merge these two code paths because they should be roughly the same. In fact, you look at them and they're very, very similar, right? So it would be kind of cool if we could go ahead and merge those. And that's something that maybe it's a little premature to do today, but maybe tomorrow when we have a little more time at the beginning, we could go ahead and merge those two code paths and make that a little simpler. So in here, if I was to do it, right, it wouldn't be very difficult, I don't expect, because I could very simply just say whatever the thing is we're actually making here, right, with the result width and height and all that, right? If I do this, I could just say, hey, we add an apron, a 1 pixel wide apron around the whole thing. And then when I copy it in here, I could first of all just clear it, right? I could say, hey, I want to clear this whole thing, right, to 0. I could clear it, and then when I actually do my writes in here, we could always make sure that we leave space for one thing, right? So we actually pre-step in one, and we in our dest we pre-step 1 pixel in, right? And I think you can see, you can kind of see, right, the little the like O's, they've got that, they're kind of truncated at the end there, right? And so I feel like if we did things this way, or we could just crash. That's also another good option, which people should be interested in all the time. Let's see here. Why did we crash? Result dot memory result height times pitch. That seems fine. Result dot memory. Moving back by 1, destro +1, That seems fine. Just row pre-step by 1. I suppose in the case where height is 0, that might be a problem. But I'm going to go ahead and... oh, but it can't, because presumably you always have some. So I'm going to go ahead and just see what the actual crash was. Let's take a look. Run it. Break. Call stack. Up in free. Well, that doesn't really tell us. It just tells us that we did have something that went off, but that doesn't really help us too much. So let's see. I'm allocating 2 extra bytes around the whole thing. I'm doing a memset of whatever the height is times the pitch, which is what I would expect because that's the malloc size. So I should be able to memset that size, certainly, to say the very least, right? The only things I changed here was that and this, right? That's it. I didn't do anything else. So it's got to be something in just that pre-stepping. If I pre-stepped 1 pixel in, right, I should have plenty of, of leeway there, right? That should not result in anything. So it has to be the fact that I did this incorrectly. So the fact that we're starting with the result memory, and then we're pre-stepping, skipping that first row is apparently the problem, right? Whatever doing that was not okay, right? Because everything else was totally fine. So for some reason, if we go the height far down and then step 2 back, that is apparently not acceptable, right? That's like not enough. And I'm not sure why, because it seems like, because we are using the wrong height. There we go. All good. So that should do it. Okay, so now, if I come back here, I'm hoping that we will get a rounder O. And it looks like we do have one, although I'm not sure if that G... we probably should take a look at what the glyphs actually are supposed to look like, because I don't really know whether we're actually still truncating them a little bit or not, but I believe, you can see the O is much smoother now, certainly. But I don't know if we might still not quite be lining everything up properly. But that's enough for today. That's fine. And of course, I would think, I'm not totally certain, but I would think that, yeah, we could sort of take a look. If this is Arial, right, we could also take a look at like WordPad or something and just see what the O and the G are supposed to look like when scaled up quite a bit, in one of these fonts, right? So where's the Arial at? There's an Arial. So if I scale that up quite a bit, that doesn't look like the same font. I wonder if we're not actually getting the font that we asked for. Oh, that's because we switched to Times New Roman or something, didn't we? I think we actually did. I'll do a double check that. But we weren't doing Arial anymore or something. Didn't we do some weird thing where we switched to a different... I don't remember which one it was. Or are we still doing Arial? Courier New is what we did. Courier New. So Courier New. So that is actually, the G actually just is flat, apparently. So that's not such a big deal, I guess. But yeah, eventually we should probably check that a little more closely. But that seems fine. All right. So let's go ahead and go to the Q&A. There we go. And then tomorrow we should be able to extract metrics. Seems reasonable. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. If you have questions, please prefix them with Q:, so I can see them. You should have passed getDC0 to create compatible bitmap, not create compatible DC, but that's fine. You would still have to use a different method to access bitmap data efficiently. Oh, okay. You're saying if we didn't care about getPixel, we could avoid having to do the create div section. Oops. Is what you're talking about? Because you just in here you do create compatible bitmap and then pass getDC0. Mr. Muffles 869, hi there. I'm rather new to Handmade Hero. Do you ever talk about your key bindings that help you navigate more easily? Yes, you can get that. So the easiest way is probably to go to the forums page. So on handmadehero.org, you can go to the forums page, and that's got a bunch of stuff like this. So coding resources is where you want to head. And I'm sorry, not coding resources, episode guide. And it's the first one here, optional editor intro, basic Emacs tutorial. This one's got a bunch of stuff you can watch, and you can watch me do it, that sort of talks about my key bindings. Waterlyman, why is arbitrary padding required for the glyph bitmap? Is the correct method used for retrieving the actual glyph size? Define arbitrary padding. What do you mean by arbitrary padding? Garlando Bloom, tell us your NASA secrets. So I don't actually know any NASA secrets. Abner Coimbray, actually the moderator here, knows all the NASA secrets, actually. He keeps them in a briefcase that is handcuffed to his wrist, and he knows martial arts. So basically, the NASA secrets are extraordinarily well safeguarded, and you're really not going to get any of them. People have tried, and they have all failed. And so, yeah, so for as long as Abner continues to safeguard them in that fashion, they're totally safe. Now, if Abner quits someday, just rage quits NASA and leaves the briefcase lying around, then, you know, the secrets will be exposed and we'll know where the aliens are stored at. But until then. Waterlyman, arbitrary equals 2 extra for width height. No, so that's not arbitrary. Just to be clear, that's by spec. So again, if you go back to the episode guide, you can look at our rendering work when we wrote the renderer. And when we wrote the renderer, we did some stuff in here where we were talking about getting things to sample bilinearly correctly. And if you take a look at how we did that, let's see here. We did that somewhere here. Seamless bilinear tiling. So in here we talk about this exact thing of wanting the apron. And so you can see us talking about it in here, if right? And maximum the apron is very specifically to have it so that we can do our bilinear sampling efficiently and not have to have a separate if statement that looks to see if we're on the border. Amy95, do you think that this stream got wasted? No, definitely not. Definitely not. Basically, anytime you investigate code, it is not wasted, right? Because, like, for example, you saw how I went about figuring out what was going on with that bitmap, right? By clearing it to a known value first, and then shrinking it down to a size where I could see what was happening to it. That was what allowed me to figure out what was going on under the hood. So I really can't stress this enough. If you think that that is wasted time, this is not the kind of programming for you, right? You want to be just using an engine or doing something else, right? That is exactly the kind of coding that you should be very comfortable doing. You should have a lot of attack skills for it. And you should be able to think of those things like what I did to debug that problem in a black box scenario you should be able to do those things. That's what I would want from an engine programmer on my team, right? I don't want somebody who just goes, oh, get pixel was working and this other thing wasn't, and I'm just fine to move on. Because that's how you end up not having any idea what your code is doing, and you have bugs, and you have people who can't investigate those bugs, and you have people who just throw minus signs into the code until it starts working, and like that's all awful. You always want to know that you actually knew what the problem was, and that you're sure you actually solved it. That's very important. So no, this is exactly the kind of thing that I want people to learn from Handmade Hero, right? That is the whole point in doing it, is for people to learn that kind of skill. No more questions? If you ask me no questions, I will tell you no lies, as the nursery rhyme goes. A better debugger would have led you to the solution much faster. Yes, no question about that. Like I was just saying on the pre-stream. A better debugger would have let me find that quickly. Pseudonym 73, just to clarify, it's okay to delete code that you don't understand and replace it with code that you do understand as an alternative to trying to understand code that you don't understand. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is I suppose it depends on the situation, but yes, in general, that sounds correct to me. Because, for example, like when you're programming the Windows API, it's a giant, messy black box thing, right? And there's no real bonus to understanding parts of it just to understand it, because it's just somebody's bad code, right? So if you have some Windows code that's doing something you have no idea what it's doing, and you're like, I want to fix this, and you want to just delete that code and then write some new code that does it in a way that you do want to make sure you get right and understand, and then you go debug that and get it working, that seems totally fine to me, right? I do that kind of thing all the time. Because there's no sense spending a ton of time debugging code that you literally don't care about and don't want to run, right? That does seem like a waste of time. But if you have code that you actually want to run, that's the code you actually wanted, that's the time when you have to go say, let's make this work correctly and make sure we know what it's doing, right? So I feel like your statement sounds correct to me. The Up 511, did you turn down a Twitch partnership? Yes, we did turn down a Twitch partnership because there's a restriction in their contract about you can't upload stuff to YouTube for 24 hours or something like this. And so I just wanted to be able to upload the things to YouTube immediately, and that was it. So yeah, there was no hard feelings or anything. Twitch has been really nice to us, and you know, it was not like there was no kind of acrimony. I just, looking at the contract, was like, yeah, this isn't really appropriate contract for Handmade Hero, so we didn't sign it. That was it. So yeah. So we love Twitch, and actually Twitch does a lot of nice things for us and has been very supportive of our stream. And the partnership isn't really a big deal for us anyway. Like, I don't want to show ads on the channel anyway. You know, partnerships let you do stuff like that or whatever, and so I don't have really, you know, it hasn't created a problem. Neither us nor Twitch really is losing something because we didn't do it. So it seems totally fine. If that changes in the future, you know, we'll try to fix it. But at the moment, I feel like Twitch is happy with us and we're happy with Twitch. So there really wasn't any reason to start arguing with each other about some contract that neither of us cared if it got signed. Have you thought about making a handmade asset viewer? No, I haven't, but that sounds like the kind of thing that would be perfect homework for people on the stream. Gerlando Bloom, Abner always lies and I always tell the truth. You may ask one question. What? I don't think that's how that riddle's supposed to go. Does a better debugger exist? Not that I know of, sadly. Pseudonym 73. The reason why I ask is that I've written code that I subsequently really had to write off. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just go, all right, look, this code is so awful, I just need to delete it. It's not going to get any better. I'm never going to understand it. It's a disaster. Let's start over. That's totally fine. What's important is that the code you're actually going to keep, you should understand, right? So that's all. Soy Sauce the Kid. I need my Casey emotes, though. Okay, so like there's some kind of thing where it would have little Casey heads or something. You know, when the next time I talk to the guys at Twitch, I'll ask them again. You know, I feel like if it was up to the people who I actually talk to, they would just get rid of that part of the contract and have no problem with it. But, you know, the reality of large companies like Twitch, which is like Amazon now or whatever, right, is that you don't, I mean, you don't even want to know what the Twitch rep guys would probably have to go through to get that contract changed, right? Like they probably have to go through like 20 layers of legal people and like have lawyers, right? So, you know, I feel like if it was just up to them, they'd just be like, yeah, no problem. You can upload the thing and we'll change that part of the contract. It's great, right? But that's not the reality at a big company. And, you know, if I were them, would I want to do that? No, because it's just this huge, big thing you got to go deal with and you got enough to worry about already. So, you know, like I said, I'd like to sign the Twitch partnership thing so that people could have whatever it is that gives you. I don't know what it gives people on the stream, but whatever it gives you, you could have it. But it's just not worth it. And it's not going to be worth it for them to fix it, I don't think, either. And for us, where we're doing an educational stream, being able to upload to YouTube immediately is really important. So I felt like that was the priority. Abner Coimbray, question. We're out of questions, but you made my life difficult tonight, XD. You know I'm under NDAs like you. You know how it is, bro. Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to create problems for you, Abner. I was just teasing. I was trying to sort of mock the people who are asking you NASA questions as if you can just tell them NASA secrets that no one can know. I guess maybe my sarcasm was a little bit too much. I think it hopefully should go without saying that Abner is happy to talk about NASA with people as far as it's possible for him to talk about NASA with people. But if NASA has something that's classified, he can't talk about it. He'd get fired or worse. So don't try to make him talk about stuff that he can't talk about. Yeah, NDAs are awful, but that's just how they work, right? And that's how business goes. Everyone does it. The chat wants you to play the Vista video again. All right, we'll do that when I sign off. DGMTV, should I stop using templates for my containers and adopt VoidStar forever? So I talked about this a little bit on previous streams, but I'll just, full disclosure. At Molly Rocket, for our engine, all containers are meta-generated. So we have our own, essentially our own programming language, and all containers go through that programming language. There's no VoidStar, there's no templates, there's none of that. So if you want my real answer, you got to metaprogram. If you want containers, you metaprogram. Don't waste time with templates, they're garbage. Don't waste time with VoidStar, it's garbage. Metaprogram. For something like Handmade Hero, where I'm kind of trying to show old school techniques, when I have to choose between one or the other, I would definitely go VoidStar. But most of the time in Handmade Hero, as you can see, we can get away without really having to do it. We can get away by just writing something that's purpose-built for that area. And by keeping the number of moving parts like that relatively low, we don't have to lean on a container thing too hard. But yeah, that's definitely like the next level after Handmade Hero, which is like Handmade Hero is your core competency. You should be able to program like this. At a drop of a hat, you should be able to do it, right? Level up from that core competency is metaprogramming. So everything after that, all of the things that are problematic, right, that you're doing coding by hand, C++ won't help you. C++ is always bad. So you don't go C++, you go metaprogramming. Or maybe like John Blow will save you with JAI, and you won't have to ever go metaprogramming, I don't know. But at least until JAI is released, you got to go metaprogramming. That's just my opinion. All good? All right, maybe it's time for some Microsoft Vista videos. All right, let's wind this down. Close, close. Okay, everyone, thank you for joining me for another episode of Handmade Hero. It's been a pleasure coding with you as always. If you would like to follow along at home with the source code, you can always pre-order the game on handmadehero.org, and it comes with all the source code, and you can play around with it and do your own programming things, whatever things those might be. Yeah, so check that out if you're interested. There's a little pre-order button right here. We also have some other buttons. There's a Patreon button if you want to support the video series. You can always just pledge to the video series. It's a super nice thing to do. But they're always free of charge, so they're always available. And in fact, they're available on our forum site with an annotated episode guide from the community, which you can check out. We also have ports to Mac and Linux, stuff like that there. We have a forum where you can ask questions, all kinds of good stuff. And finally, if you like watching the stream live, you're one of those persons who's like, it has to be live. I don't want to watch no YouTube videos. I want to watch it live. There's a tweet bot that tweets the schedule, so you can always know when we're going to be live. And speaking of that, tomorrow we'll be going back to 5 p.m., our normal time slot. So hopefully I'll see you guys back here at 5 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, right here on Twitch. Until then, have fun programming, and I will see you guys on the internet. Take it easy, everybody.